Thanks for joining me on episode 597 of the Inspired Stewardship Podcast.
I'm Gina Johnson from Synergy Mindset Coaching. I encourage you to find your own journey from surviving to thriving. And one way to be inspired to do that is by listening to this, the Inspired Stewardship Podcast with my friend, Scott Mader.
As opposed to the receiver and the inward act of understanding what the other person's saying and understanding what your audience needs, understanding what the listener needs. Do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouth, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen.
Welcome and thank you for joining us on the Inspired Stewardship Podcast. If you truly desire to become the person who God wants you to be, then you must learn to use your time, your talent, and your treasures for your true calling. In the Inspired Stewardship Podcast, you will learn to invest in yourself, invest in others, and develop your influence so that you can impact the world.
In today's Spiritual Foundation episode about investing in yourself, I talk with you about Ephesians chapter 4, verse 29, why communication isn't really just about telling, but also about listening, and how that's really a good way to invest in yourself and in others. Ephesians chapter 4, verse 29 says, "Do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen." You know, one of the things that I've struggled with over the years is this idea of communicating with others. You know, communication involves writing, it involves talking, it involves sharing information with other people. But the truth is, if that information isn't accepted and understood, then you haven't really communicated. And to know if information has been shared with someone else and understood and has acted to build them up, to be helpful, like this passage from Ephesians calls for, you have to actually listen to others. See, the truth is you can talk all you want, you can write all you want, you can share all the information you want, but if others don't understand it, then communication hasn't been achieved. And the truth is, it's your burden as the person who is communicating to make sure that you are understood. And to do that, you've got to learn to ask questions. You've got to learn to then listen to the answers. You've got to learn to try to engage with other people and find out what it is that they actually need. See, I think all too often we just assume that the answers that we need are the answers that everyone else needs. But the truth is we're wired differently, we act differently, we have different backgrounds, we have different histories, and we have different needs. And so learning to communicate is always a valuable skill when you want to invest in yourself and others. Because see, I'm going to include in this idea of beneficial communication that builds others up, I'm going to twist that and talk about building yourself up as well. See, right now, you're probably struggling to understand what you need. When we're put under stress, we begin to react oftentimes in ways that are not healthy for ourselves and healthy for others. And as we do that, we don't listen to our own needs. We don't figure out what is it that we need to do to build ourselves up. And as we've talked about, before you can build up others, you have to have some level of interest in yourself. You have to have some level of love for yourself. You have to be able to build yourself up too. Not at the exclusion of loving others and not in place of loving others. But the truth is, if you haven't added value to yourself, you can then not add value to others either. So communication is key at so many different levels. And the key to good communication is not the talking part, but the listening part. And you can switch talking with any other mode of communication. You can switch it with writing. You can switch it with anything. But the truth is, if you aren't asking questions of your audience, if you aren't engaging with them to find out whether or not what you have said or what you have shared has been received, if you haven't first engaged with your audience to find out truly what is it that they need, you can never really be an effective communicator. You can never really share with others anything that they need because you won't know what it is that they need. All too often, we are so deep inside our own heads, we see our own needs, we see our own wants, we see what we see the world as. And it's really hard for us to get out of our head and into someone else's shoes where we can understand how they see the world. You know, Matt and Jocelyn talked yesterday so much about communication and how being able to see things from the other person's point of view is so key to really getting along. That's what got me thinking about how powerful listening really is when it comes to communicating. And yet, all too often, whenever you see courses, material, training on how to communicate effectively, it's all focused on the person doing the speaking. It's all focused on the person doing the writing. It's all focused on the outward act of communicating, as opposed to the receiver and the inward act of understanding what the other person's saying and understanding what your audience needs, understanding what the listener needs. Do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouth, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen. And the truth is, you don't know what others need if you don't listen to them, if you don't observe them, if you don't pay attention to them, if you don't begin to learn how to read their personality, how to read how they interact with the world, if you don't ask them questions about what it is they need, you can never communicate effectively. So before you spend all your time and energy learning how to talk, it's probably just as important, if not more important, to learn how to listen. Thanks for listening.
Thanks so much for listening to the Inspired Stewardship podcast. As a subscriber and listener, we challenge you to not just sit back and passively listen, but act on what you've heard and find a way to live your calling. If you enjoyed this episode, do me a favor. Go over to facebook.com/inspired stewardship and like our Facebook page and mark it that you'd like to get notifications from us so that we can connect with you on Facebook and make sure that we're serving you to the best of our abilities with time and tips there. Until next time, invest your time, your talent, and your treasures. Develop your influence and impact the world.